This story takes place on one of the best nights for kids around America, but the worst night for me. It was New Year's Eve of 2020. For a little backstory, 3 or 4 months before this event took place, I broke up with my girlfriend. Let's call her Sarah. The event that caused me to break up with her was that she stole over $900 from me. I caught her, and all she said before she left was, "This isn't over." Fast forward 3 months to New Year's Eve. Since we live in Colorado and have a house in the mountains, every year, my family usually goes there to celebrate. However, this year, I couldn't make it because I had to work. I was 17 years old and had just gotten a job at my local grocery store. I had to work all day on New Year's. I stayed home, but I had no problem being alone. On New Year's Eve night, it was getting late, probably around 11:30 p.m. I decided to take a shower and go to bed as I needed to get up early the next day. As I started to shower, I heard a strange noise from the garage, sort of like a metallic banging. I thought the noise was coming from the heater because I had turned the water as hot as it would go. I finished my shower, and when I was done, I went to get in bed. As I did, I heard the noise again, although this time, it was on the other side of the yard. I was confused because I didn't think there was anything over there. I went to look out the window to see what it was. I looked out and didn't see anything but my backyard, completely empty. I disregarded it because my backyard is pretty flat and open, with nowhere for someone to hide. Now it's hard to explain, but my window is fairly large, and it has a blind spot to the left where there's a corner. Someone could easily hide there, but I was tired and didn't think about that at all. As I walked away, I heard a bang again, but this time it came from the window of my house. When I looked out the window, I saw the figure of a person dressed in all black standing there. It made me jump. However, I wasn't too scared, as I'm a fairly large guy and a high school football player. This all changed when the person at the window reached for his pocket, for what I assumed was a gun. I ran away from the window and toward my parents' room to retrieve my dad's shotgun. I knew he kept it in a safe and that the safe key was under his pillow. As I was running to retrieve it, I dialed 911. As soon as the dispatcher answered, I heard the horrific sound of glass shattering. I made it to my parents' room and shut the door quietly. I whispered into the phone, explaining to the dispatcher what was happening. She told me to stay on the line as the local sheriff was on his way, but it would take about 5 minutes or so. I told her I was going to retrieve the shotgun. She said that wasn't a bad idea, but to only use it if I had to and to be cautious. I quickly realized my dad had taken the gun with him to the mountains because they were planning to go to a shooting range. I informed the dispatcher that the gun was gone. She told me to stay on the line. For a moment, everything was silent, and I thought maybe the intruder, or whoever was in my house, got spooked when they realized someone was home. My heart sank into my chest when I heard not one, but 2 sets of boots walking up the stairs. I also heard a heavy metal pole scraping across the floor. I locked and barricaded the door to my parents' room. Then I almost passed out when I heard one of them speak. Not just any voice, but Sarah's. She said, "Happy New Year, Tommy." Then I heard a male voice mockingly say, "We know you're in there." They knocked on the door of my parents' room. I almost screamed, but instead got under the bed. Sarah then said, "Don't worry. If you don't open the door, we'll open it for you." I heard the pole hit the door and the lock started jiggling. I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep quiet. Then, all of a sudden, I heard police sirens and Sarah muttering curses. I heard them running down the stairs, trying to leave through the front door. Then I heard someone yell, "Freeze!" There was a bunch of yelling, and then an officer came in, announced himself, and told anyone in the house to make themselves known. I called out, telling him I was Tommy and that I had dialed 911. He told me to come out slowly with my hands visible. As I left my parents' room, I saw Sarah and the man being escorted out in handcuffs. The rest of my night consisted of filling out paperwork and talking to my parents, who made a 3-hour drive home to be with me. This incident was very disturbing to me, and I'm grateful I reacted the way I did. Had I not, I might not be here right now. Christmas, everyone's favorite time of the year. It was certainly my favorite time of the year until one night changed everything. That one night changed my life forever. It was Christmas Eve of 2017. I was sitting in my living room, watching the snow fall heavier and heavier. I was enjoying myself, drinking a cup of hot cocoa, until I heard a knock at my door. I thought, who could it be at this hour? It was 1:03 in the morning. I got up to open the door, and to my surprise, I saw nobody. I closed the door thinking I was being ding-dong ditched, or it was all in my head. 5 minutes later, another knock on my door. I once again got up to open it, and when I saw nobody, I sighed and shut it. Almost immediately after, there was another knock. This time, I was quick enough to swing the door open, and I could just get a glimpse of a kid. He looked to be about 5 or 6 years old, running toward a house across the street. Surprisingly, I never knew who lived there, and quite frankly, I never seemed to care. However, this time, I wanted to know why such a little kid was roaming outside in the middle of the night. So I planned to go over there the next morning. Morning finally came, and I headed toward the house where I was sure I saw the little boy run. When I knocked on the door, nobody answered. I figured they weren't home and decided to come back later. That evening, I tried going back to the house and once again knocked. There was no answer again. I thought to myself, this is quite strange. I then tried the doorknob, and to my surprise, the door wasn't locked. Curiosity got the better of me, and I unlawfully entered the house knowing I was breaking and entering. As soon as I entered, I smelled something foul in the air, the smell of rotting meat. The inside of the house looked like nobody had lived there for years. I decided to check upstairs. Once I climbed to the top step, I saw 5 bedrooms adjacent to each other. I checked the one to my right, which was nothing special, just a bed and a closet. I checked the rest of the bedrooms and found nothing. Great, I thought to myself. This was a complete waste of my time. Just as I was about to leave, though, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It startled me. I knew I was caught red-handed. But just as I was about to say anything, I saw it was a woman. She put her hand over my mouth and shushed me. I slowly backed away and then sprinted back to my house. As I did, I heard the blood-curdling scream of the woman telling me to come back. I got back to my house and decided not to do anything. At 3 a.m., I woke up to sounds outside my window. I looked out and saw the same woman staring back at me with a wide smile across her face. Her crazed eyes stared back at me from the other side of the glass. I fell back in shock and then dialed 911. Cops arrived at my location within minutes. I told them what happened, and they went to the house across the street. They searched it and found nothing. They told me there were no signs of anyone there since the horrifying murder that had taken place in that very house. I was shocked. I hadn't heard of anything happening at all in that house. As it was an ongoing investigation, the cops were not able to give me the information I so desperately wanted to know. The next day, I did some research, and what I found made me sick. On December 31st, a mother and her son were brutally murdered inside that very house. December 31st. I linked everything together and stared at myself in the mirror in pure horror. The events that took place have changed me forever. In the next 8 months, I quit my job and had to get therapy for the rest of the year. I would wake up late at night to see the woman's crazed smile staring back at me, and I would scream in pure horror. It's been a year since this traumatizing experience, and I'm still recovering. This happened many years ago when I was a little boy. It was Christmas time, and my family and I lived on the ground floor of a large apartment complex in Denver, Colorado. I remember one Saturday afternoon when my mom excitedly told me that Santa was visiting our apartment building. The event was being held in the community room, a shared space where tenants occasionally gathered for celebrations. They were hosting a Meet Santa event, and my mom thought it would be fun for my sister and me to attend. When we got there, the room wasn't crowded. It seemed like only the families who lived nearby and had young children showed up. Still, there was a festive atmosphere. Kids were laughing, Christmas music was playing softly in the background, and there were snacks laid out on a table. My sister and I joined the line to meet Santa. When it was my turn, he greeted me with a warm smile and asked what I wanted for Christmas. Without hesitation, I told him I wanted the new PlayStation. Santa chuckled, stroked his fake-looking beard, and asked if I lived in the apartment complex. I told him yes, and even mentioned that I lived just down the hall. He nodded, saying he would see what he could do about the PlayStation, and handed me a candy cane. I was so excited. We left the event and went back to our apartment, where my mom decided we should bake holiday cookies. While my sister helped out in the kitchen, I played with my Game Boy in my room. That night, something strange happened. I wasn't very sleepy, so I was lying in bed, still playing a game. My bed was right next to the window, which had blinds slightly open, allowing me to peek outside. Suddenly, I heard a light tapping on the glass. Curious, I looked up and froze. Outside my window, I saw Santa. He was standing there, looking in with a wide smile. My heart skipped a beat, not because I was scared, but because I didn't understand why Santa was outside my window in the middle of the night. Santa motioned for me to open the window. Hesitant, but still intrigued, I slid the window open. He grinned and asked if I remembered him from earlier in the community room. I nodded, and he handed me another candy cane. Then, in a soft voice, he said, "I want to show you my sleigh. Do you want to see it?" Even as a child, something about this situation felt strange. It wasn't Christmas Eve yet, it was still a week away. But he was Santa, and the idea of seeing his sleigh sounded exciting. So, when he asked me to climb out the window, I didn't hesitate. I opened the window wider and started to crawl out. At that exact moment, my bedroom door swung open. My mom walked in, saw what was happening, and ran toward me. She grabbed me and pulled me back inside. Santa, or whoever he was, turned and ran into the darkness without saying a word. My mom, visibly shaken, demanded to know what was going on. When I explained, her face grew pale. She sat me down and told me the man at my window wasn't Santa, but an imposter. She immediately called the police. Although they arrived quickly, the man was already gone. I went to bed that night, confused and scared. Years later, I asked my mom about that night. She told me that the police had managed to identify and catch the man based on the description provided by other parents. He had apparently been at the apartment earlier that day, posing as Santa to gain children's trust. To this day, I feel grateful that my mom came into my room when she did. Without her, who knows what might have happened that night.